Welcome to Byte into Future. We just launched our event, our podcast officially with NYSE leader, Brian Anand, and then my partner in crime, Adam. Now come the first segment. So I'm super excited to welcome Ben to New York Stock Exchange.
Thank
Hello,
you for having
Ben.
me.
So we were hanging out just at RSA, and congratulations, big congratulations for winning the Sandbox Innovation Award.
Thank you. RSA was fantastic.
And then, I always tell people that this innovation award from Sandbox or from RSA is like an Oscar. The day you win the award versus the day afterward, it's totally different. That's what I usually tell people. Now you tell us, what's your experience after winning? Like a VC calling you all the time, or what's the difference?
Yeah, we have about 2,000 emails to get through.
Literally?
2024 actually, but
wow.
It's interesting. We met a lot of VCs and a lot of companies and potential clients who just a few years ago told us deepfakes, they're not going to be an issue. But then we had folks like you who met us early and said, you know what, this is going to be a problem. It might not happen for a few days, a few months, a few years, but it caught up in a really quick way. So we appreciate your very early support.
You and I had a conversation, and then 5 minutes into it, I said, I'm in. And I can share that part a little bit. I think it's more than just the 5 minutes into it. You and I are in this super founder group, right? Thanks to Ali.
Ali Tamaseb has been a phenomenal investor leading our Series
Thank
A.
you so much, Ali. And then, he got us in this super founder group, and I watched you how to respond to other founders. I had a very good impression on you anyways, right? So even though I never invested in this company before, the moment that you called, I was like, wow, this thing is so meaneful, right? Deepfake. I've been a security person for last 2 decades. The moment I heard that you are doing this, there was some already some traction. I said, wow, this is almost too good to be true. Unlike like you said, other VCs who sort of
we had 200 meetings. 190 of them said deepfake's not an issue, and then 9 of them asked us to pivot into NFT authentication. But we met Ali and super founders. Quite frankly, I was the smallest person in the group of super founders, but DC, VC, and Ali brought me into a very interesting circle, and I'm excited to pay it forward.
2024, and guess what? Since I listed, I'm a very proud investor of Reality Defender. I listed this on my LinkedIn. Even me got quite a few calls. I said, "Hey, guys, you should have told me, 5 days early. You may have a much better chance to." But anyway, coming back to this, right? Just to give our audience some background, right? Deepfake, like, why did you start this company, and then give us a little bit about your journey so far.
Yeah, my background has been across different areas of government defense and intelligence on the defensive side, never offensive. And I worked at Google in grad school, and I did my kind of finishing school at Goldman Sachs under CISO Phil Venables, who's a legend in all things cybersecurity. He's now the CISO of Google Cloud. And we were seeing a lot of potential fraud across the financial services space. Not yet with deepfakes, just more analog fraud. And the kind of question that we kept thinking about was what would happen if this was much more programmatic, instead of me trying to hack you. What if I could hack everybody here in real time with customized generative media? And when we started the company, there was no word deepfake, there was no word generative AI. We call them AI avatars or digital humans. And so we definitely were much more, and still are, on the research side. 2/3 of our team are PhD researchers or engineers. We're going to keep it that way. And this field is going to continue to evolve. So we're very much in the early chapter, very similar to endpoint security for antivirus. We're kind of in the early 90s. It's just it's moving a lot faster.
Yeah, the other day we were chatting about it, right? The malware. I see a little bit of the similar things here. So describe to our audience about what happened last year, right? On this, stock exchange. Something happened. Tell us that story that you told the senators just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we gave testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee 2 weeks ago, really about how the space is moving so quickly. It's moving faster than regulations can be created to protect average people. And the challenge in that a year ago I would have given advice on how to detect a deepfake, what to look for. The problem right now is that the technology is so advanced, even our PhD experts can't tell the difference with their naked eyes. And with a lack of regulations, it requires average people, much less technical you and I, to really just trust the platforms to protect them. And right now the platforms, whether it's social media or streaming or even marketplaces or professional networking, they don't do anything to protect consumers. They actually do less than nothing. They tell you to trust their moderators, their human moderators. They tell you to trust their community notes. And the challenge there is that only happens once it's been shared 1 million times. And as I say, you can't take the toothpaste, once it's out of the tube, you can't put it back into the tube. And so for us, our view has always been you need AI to detect AI, and that's what we're building.
And then the stock exchange, last, middle of last year. That's precisely 1 year ago.
Yeah,
what
that was one.
pictures? Yeah.
There was a picture of what looked like an explosion at the Pentagon. I mean, it looked real to us. And it was right before diffusion
Looked real
models.
to almost everyone, right?
It certainly did. It moved so real that it led to a $100 billion flash crash in the market within seconds. And
100 billion.
100 billion, yeah. And the market did correct itself, but someone could have made or lost a lot of money, and they probably did.
So right here on this floor, $100 billion loss.
Yep. And that's just a small snapshot of what could have happened. It wasn't a CEO giving an earnings announcement that was incorrect. It was what looked like an explosion, and we detected it as a diffusion-based generative image. But that was a single image. Imagine what could happen if real-time audio, real-time video, ahead of an election year when 2/3 of the world is voting in an election.
One day before the election or whatnot, right?
We heard an audio clip of President Biden telling people not to vote in the primary, and people were amazed by that. It was really scary. But imagine a customized deepfake in real time to all of us, from our boss, from our wife or our husband saying, I need you at home today, or you're an election worker saying, I want you to go across town. The technology is one mouse click away. It's available on our phones, Google search, it's...
Yeah, I think, for that Biden speech or the, Pentagon thing, perhaps, maybe it's a little bit hindsight, but perhaps using some common sense, you say, oh, this may be fake, or when you do some Google search. But then there are certain things you can fake it, and that's in such a subtle way. Mm-hmm. People don't even bother to, hey, Google it, or people may just get that impression, right? So it's kind of very dangerous. So it's kind of a, I'm so glad I invite you. You are the very first interviewee on my live broadcast at NYSE. But for what you guys, what the implication of the technology, it's so meaningful for the NYSE even, right? Okay, so before this interview, right before this interview, you were jokingly said, "Hey, it may be more stressful interview than the one you did at a senator." So I'm going to ask you some stressful questions, just to make it real.
Please.
So, technology-wise, right? People's perception is, well, to detect this deepfake is really, really difficult. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine said, even for OpenAI, for them to detect. This is an OpenAI generated text or not. Even OpenAI is not quite able to do that. Mm-hmm. So they are kind of skeptical whether you are able to do it, right or so. Tell us.
Yeah, I mean, at a very macro level, what you're describing, the kind of cat and mouse game, the whack-a-mole, as we say, that's true of anything within cybersecurity. Both sides are constantly evolving. I think what makes it different in our field is that that's much more a feature than a bug. From our team, we're both focusing on indicators of fakeness, which is getting better and better and better. We're also detecting indicators of realness, which is hopefully not changing unless we all move into the metaverse. Mm-hmm. So in that respect, we are able to stay one step ahead by effectively predicting where we think technology is going to go. Our team is constantly spending time in the research space. We're actually pushing research out to all the big conferences. CVPR, NeurIPS, and so we do keep a little bit of our
top conferences.
We keep our secret sauce, private. We do patent part of it, and we do effectively share it through this research. And because of that, not only are we engaging with the research community, but we're actively supporting it as well. We certainly also have to attract the best and the brightest researchers.
So in other words, it might be true that for OpenAI even, it's harder for them to detect that this is from OpenAI now. But you are able to detect some of that. You have a better technology from that point of view.
I'll be careful what I say, but we do have models. Think of it as a constellation of models that are all interconnected for audio, for video, for images, and for text. From our clients' view, they've used our text model, more accurate than OpenAI's. But OpenAI's, they're doing great things on the generative side. And a lot of other things. We're focused very narrowly on this very, very, very thin area, which is developing inference models, not provenance models, across generative AI. And so given our focus, we've been able to be incredibly robust across both known and also unknown generative techniques. For example, the diffusion image that we talked about earlier in this interview, diffusion wasn't that big right then. It wasn't a known kind of technology. We already were kind of looking for it the same way we look for different kind of biomarkers. We look for things like eye blinking and heartbeat and your skin actually changes color and breathing and sound versus mouth correlation. We haven't seen any great fakes do that yet, but if we do see that, unless you're, as I say, unless you're a werewolf or a vampire, then it's probably AI because you know heartbeat.
And you are a step ahead of the curve, right? You
We're
know, you
always
don't see
gonna
enough
be-
of that, but you started already working on it. So to my friend who's challenging me that, hey, how come your friend Ben is able to do that if OpenAI is not able to do that? I think the answer is, well, the analogy, when you talk about this, I was thinking about the analogy, which is, like a Microsoft, right? They're able to do malware detection or whatnot, but then there are also a lot of other security companies who are able to do malware detection better than Microsoft, right? And it's the same thing. Just because you sort of own the original system doesn't mean you have the right focus or you have enough of the focus, right?
It's absolutely about focus.
Right.
Whereas at one of these big companies, they might have a person or a team focusing on it. So we're not competing with the company, we're competing with one PM who might be trying to develop something in this space. And coming from big companies myself, sometimes it's hard to push innovation through a big company.
Yep. So that's one, right? The other one is people always ask me, hey, how does this technology being inserted, right? Sure, I understand it can detect fake voice, but when and how, right? For instance, if I call into my Bank of America or Citibank, custom name aside, right? Are they going to sort of route the voice through you? Like, how's the insertion?
So the short answer is they are. We work with majority of the tier one banks. So let me just say what we do not do. We don't do any voice print matching, face print matching. We don't touch any PII. There's no risk of us losing any personal data because we don't actually see any. We're not comparing your voice against a snapshot or a hash of your voice. We don't do that. All we're doing is saying, is this voice stream have indicators of AI generation or manipulation? Now what that means is we connect into the voice stream the same way the banks do when they're already doing their kind of compliance checks and others. We're getting a real-time stream, either deployed on the bank's cloud or on their premises, or within our secure SaaS environment. And we're stringing back real-time indications of probabilistic scores that your voice or your face have different kinds of AI within their generative technique.
So which means that when according to whether Bank of America, Citibank, their receptionist picks up the phone, there's some indication or potentially some indication from some channel that this is AI generated voice.
Well, typically it starts with the call center. So think about your tier one bank calling a call center or them calling you. You want to do a wire transfer, now they're calling you to verify it too, but it could be somebody else. Historically, they've used voice authentication tools and IVR technology to do this. The whole idea of your voice as your password, it doesn't work anymore when you could go online on Google and find a voice cloning tool and fake your voice with 6 seconds of audio. And so for us, we either sit on...
Only 6 seconds is needed.
It might be even less. I mean, last week it was 6, but it's getting less and less.
Wow.
But what we do is we sit kind of on top of it or before it, because even if they know your name, your birthday, and it sounds like you and looks like you, it can be stolen from the dark web, or it could have gotten it from YouTube, or it could have hacked your email. And so for us, if we say this voice or this face is AI generated, it doesn't matter if all the other information is correct, because we know that it's fake. And so we do that for the bank, and we serve the insight back to the call center front end. It could be a red X or a green check mark. It could be a probabilistic score. It could be a call to action to either ask you 2 more questions. It could automatically flag it for incident response or escalation, or it could say this is so fake that we're going to automatically block the user or the action or lock the account because something bad is happening.
Okay. So one of the things that RSA Sandbox Innovation Award does, not only to award people like you, the company like Reality Defender for such a wonderful job you are doing, but also set a tone for the industry, right? This is coming, this is going to be a big deal.
Right.
So oftentimes, if not 20 companies, right, quite a few companies will be born or shifted their focus to what you are doing. What's your thought on that one?
I think we're really mirroring the same growth story of endpoint security for antivirus software. and we kind of look to our, our forefathers and previous relatives and mothers and fathers in the space on what happened in the 80s and the 90s and 2000s. And in that space, they developed a lot of really interesting technology, but they needed to wait for the computational power to catch up. And we're in the same space. Right now we use quite expensive cloud compute, and our goal in the next 2 years, we're partnering with some of the large silicon manufacturers. How can we deploy to the edge? How can we deploy, on device, on your laptop, on your tablet, on your phone? And it'll happen, and we're trying to see how much we could push that to happen faster.
Okay, I can see there's so much work to be done, right? One is accuracy, but the other thing is the efficiency, right? Latency, all that, the cost.
Absolutely.
It sounds like there's such a wide spectrum of things you can do. So you really look at it as a kind of a Norton of Symantec and then McAfee, 20, 30 years ago, right? You see that this is the beginning of a journey.
Right now we're scanning what the client uploads. So for those of you who are listening, we remember you used to pick a certain file, scan this one, and then early 2000s you got an email from your company or your school saying, we're going to lock your computers because we're going to take it over for Friday to Saturday to update it and check for viruses. But now it happens all the time in real time. And so we're doing the same thing. Right now you kind of pick the files you want to scan. Where we want to go is we want to scan everywhere, all the time, in real time. We can do that. The computational costs need to come down a bit.
So we're, when do you think it will take a few years or to get it, or it's going to be rather quick?
I think it's going to be rather quick. Yeah, things are moving quite fast.
Okay, so in the AI age, AI era, everything is compressed, right?
It is. I mean, whether you want to think about it from a GPU world or maybe perhaps a non-GPU world, we're trying to kind of position ourselves for either one. On our side, our clients want to deploy this wherever the fraud happens. And while we're only focusing on large companies like these, we do want to figure out a way to support consumers. And that has to be on device or within the kind of telecom pipes directly.
Since you mentioned this about efficiency, the cost, it's a little less related, but I can't help but asking, are you bullish on Nvidia stock?
Super bullish.
Super bullish.
I think any company doing anything interesting in silicon has a pretty interesting growth story. Now, Nvidia has a pretty great head start, and we did speak at Nvidia GTC.
Yes.
The question is, can they kind of miniaturize it and actually deploy it on device? We're hoping so we can use it. But on our side, we're not going to wait. We are right now using commodity cloud across all the cloud providers. But our clients, they want to be able to take it in-house if they can.
So everything seems to be smooth. Of course, as an entrepreneur, fellow entrepreneur, I know there are always things on the other side, right? What keep you awake? What is the...
Last night, flying back from RSA,
Yes.
getting back at 4 in the morning.
Thanks for, doing this, flying back almost, well, one is blaming the airline, but on the other hand, really appreciate your just flying all the way from Silicon Valley to Wall Street for this show, right? That's why we want you to be the #1 opening up our session. But, aside from that, any other things? That,
Challenges? One of the questions they asked us at RSA is, what are your biggest challenges as a company? And they wanted us to think about specific technology or process. But the truth is, it's hiring. Hiring is my #1 kind of time-based responsibility right now. We're using every tool. We're using AI, we're using different kinds of automation, we're using recruiters. But to find the best folks, we have to go really early. And so we're literally pulling people out of PhD programs. We're reading their thesis or their dissertation. And we're also kind of contributing research to them and trying to see how we can collaborate. Anyone who's been doing this for more than a few years doesn't know what's going on because it's being invented within the graduate schools right now. And so if any folks are listening to this and are interested in working with us, whether it's an internship during your PhD or your master's or undergrad, we'd love to talk to them and find kind of the research scientists and research engineers and full stack developers of the future to work with us today.
I'm pretty sure the Sandbox Innovator Award will help you to attract a few more PhD talents, but I think I think this is what a good company is always, looking for, right? More and more talents.
Yeah.
That's a very good sign. Every time when people say my biggest challenge is the talent, I like it rather than the market is too big or not too big.
No, our biggest problem
right?
is it's been all inbound. So we only started doing outbound sales, and the inbound it's a fire hose, and the kind of creativity and use cases that we're seeing. It really is limited only by our imaginations of what companies and countries are seeing in terms of AI-generated fraud.
So, so much about the what you guys are doing right now, near term. But let's talk about two interesting topics, a little bit beyond the reality
Sure.
defender. One is AGI, right? You know, people kept asking, hey, when is AGI going to happen? What's your view?
You know, I think that's a bigger question for the silicon manufacturers. You know, we've met folks who have a certain prediction or a certain hypothesis on how they could do it, and they're just waiting for the computational power needed to do it. You know, not everyone has $1 billion to spend on cloud compute, but I think it's not going to happen.
AGI is going to happen in the next 5 years?
I think it's going to happen. I have a different view, though. I don't think it's going to happen at the large technology companies. I think it's going to happen with an interesting startup who's found a bit of a shortcut to accelerate.
Because they're going to have a different architecture, or
probably a different approach to run computation.
Really?
And, you know,
because you feel like the way we are doing it's too much, you know, too much energy, too much sort of the GPU hungry. Is that what you're saying? And then someone will figure out a much leaner way in terms of architecture, maybe not quite transformer.
There's a guy I work with at Goldman Sachs named Paul Burchard. He's a PhD. He worked at Goldman for 20 years, and if he's right, his new company will be able to solve for this by increasing computation 10 to the 50th power. So it's quite a big hurdle, but I think there's going to be a lot of interesting innovation in the space, and we're very excited to leverage it to help protect people from AI. We use AI to detect AI, and that's exactly where we want to sit.
Interesting. And then using AI to design some newer technology, the platform, all that kind of things too.
Yeah.
The last question I wanted to ask is, you know, you're a serial entrepreneur. This is the second time you are doing a startup, right?
Well, I've had a few failures. They're not on my LinkedIn, so.
So more than one. But, you know, tell us, you know, what's different this time, and then also what, exactly, you know, what did you learn from the past experience so that, you know, I'm doing this right only because, you know, thankful for my...
You know, when I was younger, I said yes to everything everywhere. It opened a lot of doors, but sometimes they were too many doors and they could be a distraction. And so what I have learned, I'm still learning, is how to respectfully say no to opportunities, whether they're incredible revenue, incredible customer, incredible opportunity. If they're not core to our mission, that same time committed there would have a bigger return focusing on what we're actually delivering. And so in our space, we're meeting brilliant people every day who have really interesting use cases, and for us it's staying so narrowly focused. We may expand and go to other horizontals, but we have to exceed at exactly what we're doing now before we consider trying anything new. So I'm still learning it, and I think it's the biggest challenge.
So the thing you learned from the past experiences or other, you know, startups you have done in the past is, you know, laser focus.
Laser.
Right?
You can't make everyone happy all the time. So stay very focused, and you know, for us, we had one tier 1 bank that was our design partner 2 years ago, and we, you know, half our team become a supporter of them. And it might not be what some entrepreneurs would do. It might have been a bit strange or risky, but you know, to get it right your first time, it's incredibly valuable. And it's an incredible investment in time and energy and lack of sleep. But yeah, we meet folks like you because of it.
So I do have one more questions. You know, you come to Silicon Valley a lot. Today I come to Wall Street. You know, what is the difference between between the New York entrepreneurs versus the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs? What's your observation?
The interesting thing in New York City is that the entrepreneurs have core experience at the clients they're serving. You know, they've worked at tier 1 banks, tier 1 technology companies.
They understand the use cases.
Government research, and they probably invented their product in a version at their company, but couldn't get the buy-in to actually develop it. Whereas in San Francisco, you have brilliant people at 22 who have an idea.
Maybe inventing something in the bubble.
They might have an idea in search of a customer, in search of a problem. I'd also say that, you know, I'm told that hiring in San Francisco is better than SF just because of the concentration of talent in AI. I don't think that's the case. I think it's better in New York. You have people who go to these finishing schools like I did at Goldman Sachs, where I learned more there than I did during, you know, my graduate school at NYU or my undergrad at Claremont McKenna. And so I think that the fact that not everyone in New York City is doing enterprise technology or startups, I think it's a massive advantage that we need to talk louder about. You know, we could throw a stone and hit hundreds of people who could potentially come work for our company. Now the challenge though is they are very comfortable in their banks or their tech companies, but I think that's changing. People want a different kind of work-life balance. They want to work on really hard problems. They want to do less busy work for a big company. For me, myself, I have a wife and 2 small kids, so it's definitely a challenge. My wife is my boss, and my boss says, maybe it's more stable at a big company, and she's not wrong. So in New York, you get folks who are a little further ahead in their careers. They may have families, but they've learned something really core, and they know that other companies have the same problem, and they have an idea of how to solve it, and they already know who the first customer is going to be.
In the case of Reality Defender, is that the case?
Absolutely. Our first clients were my former colleagues and friends at the banks, because I knew we had this issue, and I knew we tried to solve it before using other tools that didn't work anymore.
They already got bothered by the fake images and the voices at the time?
They hadn't. That was interesting. They hadn't, but they understood that it was coming.
Okay.
So to them, it was them coming to us, as opposed to us going to them. And also with COVID, everything was on video chat. So obviously another venue for potential fraud, a fake Ben. How do you tell the difference? So there was an interesting way for us to go to San Francisco without having to travel by doing video chat.
So you started at this company during the thick of the pandemic.
We did Y Combinator during 2022. We didn't actually meet anybody in Y Combinator.
Right.
Our 3 co-founders, the first 18 months, we probably only spent 20 hours, maybe less, maybe 10 hours, physically together. So I would almost argue that the remote work was incredibly beneficial for us. We do have an office here in New York now on Broadway. It's great to be in the office, but there is a way you could successfully develop a culture with combination of remote and in person.
Cool. So what I got is, there's a very healthy ecosystem support, as a New York entrepreneur. Very, very good to hear that. And then that's why I'm here also to learn, get to know more entrepreneurs like yourself who are more attached to the real problem, right? That's what you're saying. And so we are at a New York Stock Exchange. When are you going to, ring the bell here?
It'll be an exciting day. It'll be a really, really exciting day. As a New Yorker, as a Californian who's now a New Yorker, looking out here, this is this is the future. It's a great North Star to look towards. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I hope soon.
I'm very excited to have this conversation with you, and I'm hopeful that when you ring the bell over there, I have
You'll be
a
with
space
me.
next. Yes.
Amazing.
Okay, deal. Okay, thank you for coming over. This is Byte into Future. We just finished our very first segment. Essentially, I'm his investor, right, Ben Colman, talking about entrepreneurship, and also the new malware in some ways, right, the deepfake stuff. So hopefully you learned something. Thank you for watching.